Days and distances rushed by us like grains of sand in a storm, determined to move away as quickly as possible from Ayodhya, that ache in our heart. We left Sumantra weeping in his chariot. We crossed marshes and fens and rivers, Ganga and Yamuna, Saryu and Falgu. We accepted the hospitality of many, not caring whether they were of high caste or low, for Ram loved all whose hearts were pure. We walked over rough ground until our feet blistered and bled and healed and grew calluses. Rain beat down upon us, sun scorched us, and once we entered the woods, blood sucking insects dived down, winning to feed delightedly on our palace fattened bodies. My only solace in all this hardship was the company of my husband and his sensitivity to my difficulties. He padded the hard ground extra thick with sweet smelling rushes so that I would be able to sleep better at nights. Still, the punishing pace we had set ourselves was too much for me. When we reached Chitrakoot mountain, Ram looked at my exhausted face and announced that we would stop here for a few days. It is not safe, Lakshman grumbled. This is one of the main routes through the forest. Anyone can find us here. It seemed that he was right. Just 2 days later, there was a disturbance in the air. The birds grew silent. The animals retreated into invisibility. In the distance, we heard a faint roar like a forest fire that grew into the thud of hoofbeats and the clang of weaponry. Lakshman narrowed his eyes and sniffed the air, but it was Ram who said, Bharat is coming. Lakshman pushed his brother behind him and stood at attention. Take care of sister in law, he said. It is only Bharat, said my husband, our own brother. You worry too much. I have to, Lakshman retorted, because you don't worry enough. Not everyone is righteous or simple as you. When will you learn that? And tell me this, if Bharat is really coming in friendship, why is he bringing the whole army of Ayodhya with him? He strung his bow and held it steady as the cacophony of the marching soldiers grew closer. Ram smiled and shook his head, but I shivered. What if Bharat was coming to make sure that he would be king not only now but forever? That there would be no one to come back after 40 years and reclaim Ayodhya from him? My husband, however, turned out to be a better judge of character than his suspicious brother, and doubting wife. When Bharat finally appeared, he was dressed not as a warrior or even a king, but in white cotton dhoti of a morning sun, barefoot, his head shaven. He threw himself weeping at his brother's feet, and Ram, lifting him up, also wept because he knew that Dashrath was dead. Just moments after you left, crying your name, his eyes darkening even before the dust had settled from the passing of your chariot, Bharat said. Bharat begged Ram to return and take over the kingdom. That is why I brought the ministers and commanders of the army with me, and even our Guru Vasishta, he said, so that we can crown you at once with all the proper ceremonies. The throne rightfully belongs to you, and no amount of plotting by my mother. Here his voice broke and shame darkened his face, will make it otherwise. I had never paid much attention to Bharat. To me, he had been a shadow planet orbiting around my husband's brilliance. But now I saw that there was an austerity in his bearing, a nobility. Not many men would have been willing to give up a kingdom that had fallen into their lap easier than a ripe mango. I couldn't help but admire that. My thoughts were interrupted by Lakshman. Bharat is right, you know. As firstborn, the kingdom is yours. Also, you will be better at ruling it than any one of us. You came away to the forest for father's sake. You have fulfilled his promise, unreasonable as it was. Now that he is dead, your debt is cancelled. Now you must return for the sake of the people of Ayodhya. Isn't that your main duty as a king to take care of your subjects? He had spoken the magic word duty, the duty of a king towards his people. I saw Ram stand up taller. A look of indecision flitted over his face. Shatrugna, who had been standing in the shadows, stepped forward to add his entreaties. Please come back, brother. Even Guru Vasishta agrees that with the king's death, your vow is fulfilled. What Kaikeyi, I can't stand to call her mother, made you do was totally wrong. You should have seen how angry Bharat was with her when he came back to Ayodhya and found what she had done. He denounced her publicly in the court and imprisoned her in her quarters. She won't give you any trouble. You won't have to see her ever again. And as for that hunchback devil, who was the real schemer behind all this, I beat her half to death and threw her out on the streets. If Bharat hadn't stopped me, I would have killed her. Bharat joined his palms in imploration. Please come back, elder brother. The kingdom is in turmoil. People are writing. Many are leaving Kaushal. Your return would help Kaushalya Ma too. She is so depressed that we are afraid for her life. Ram paced up and down in silence. I could feel the conflict raging inside him. Was he weighing his duty to a dead father against the love of a living mother? Was he thinking of what was best for his subjects? For that is how they still thought of themselves, Ram's people, no matter who sat on the throne. For a moment, his eyes lighted on me. Was he thinking of his husbandly duty to protect me from danger, to provide me with the comforts and dignities that were mine as the rightful queen of Ayodhya? Once again, our fortunes seemed to be shifting. I tried to imagine returning to Ayodhya, which had receded dreamlike from my mind. It would be wonderful to enjoy again the luxuries I had taken for granted all my life. To bathe in warm scented water instead of cold streams in which slimy creatures lurked. To wear freshly laundered clothes instead of the same mud crusted sari over and over. To sleep on a soft bed and not on leaves, which, no matter how high Ram piled them, didn't protect me from the ground lumpy with roots and stones. To get away from the insects who whined around my ears day and night and preferred me to the men as their food source. Most of all, it would be wonderful to be back with Urmila and Kaushalya Ma, to not have guilt well up in me whenever I remembered how I had left them. Yet, strangely, a part of me didn't want to abandon our adventure so soon. I had the feeling we had only scratched the surface of what the forest had to offer, that so far it had been testing us. Once it was convinced that we were worthy, that we had truly chosen it over other options, it would open up untold treasures for our enjoyment. What these were, I had no idea. I only sensed that they were deep and intense, enchanting beyond anything I had ever experienced. Sweet, but with an exciting aftertaste of danger. Now I held my breath, watching Ram, wondering what he would say. Whatever he decided would change the course of all our lives. Ram spoke slowly. You make good points, brothers. Indeed, it is important for a king to take care of his people. But I am still and foremost a son bound by his father's pledge. I must respectfully disagree with Guru Vashishta. Whether King Dashrath is alive or not makes no difference to a vow that was made in the presence of gods. Only after the 14 years he promised to Kaikeyi can I be free to be king to my people and a son to my mother. Until then, Brother Bharat, you are the Ayodhya's only hope. Take care of Kaushalyama for me and try to forgive Kaikeyima. Remember, whatever she did to protect you the way a tigress protects its young, not caring if her claws slash anyone in the process. A closed look came over Bharat's face and he spoke in a hard voice. I am sorry, brother, but I will never forgive her for how she destroyed our entire family. He clasped Ram's hands, tears in his eyes. Please, let me go to the forest instead of you. If the pledge requires that someone must be banished for 14 years, that someone must suffer, let me be that person. Perhaps then some of the weight of Kaikeyi's sin, which I feel on my head, will be lifted. The hatred with which he said his mother's name shook me. Surely, all his life, Bharat had loved his mother dearly. Surely, he realized that what she had done had been for his sake alone. But today, when he spoke of her, there was only disgust in his voice. Could love, which I had taken to be powerful and everlasting, be so frail as well? Could you pluck it out of your heart as easily as you would pull a weed from a bed of flowers? I thought of my love for Ram and his for mine, which defined my entire being. It frightened me to imagine this happening to us. I would never be able to survive such a loss. I came back to the present with a start. Ram was speaking to Bharat. You should feel no such weight. Among us all, you are the most innocent. But we can't modify a vow to suit our convenience. That is not the way of the Raghu lineage. You know that. I and I alone must live in the forest for my allotted time. It is my destiny. Perhaps I am being sent to the forest to cleanse it of dark forces. The kingdom for me until I return. I know you will do it masterfully. Bharat didn't protest again. He must have heard the tone of finality in my husband's voice. He knew that Ayodhya could not remain unkinged any longer. He took back with him Ram's sandals, saying he would place them on the throne. He himself would sit on the floor, governing Ayodhya as a regent in the absence of the true king. Just before he left, I asked the question that had been eating at me all this while. What is news of Urmila? I missed her so much, it was hard to even speak her name. Bharat seemed taken aback by my question. Enmeshed in affairs of state, he had clearly given no thought to her. But Shatrughna, the quiet one, said, Shrutikirti told me that she has shut herself in her chambers since you left. Not even her cousins have been allowed to enter her room. She must have sworn her attendants to secrecy, for they won't say anything except that she is not ill. I stole a glance at Lakshman. He stared out at the shadows that had taken over the forest, his face devoid of expression. But I saw his throat constrict, and I knew he thought of his wife with sorrow. Perhaps he wished that he had allowed her to accompany us. That night, I said to Ram, if Vashishta, who knows the Vedas better than anyone in Ayodhya, says it is acceptable for you to be crowned king, no one will question it. You know that. You also know that you would be a far better king than Bharat. It will be benefit so many people if you go back. Why don't you? Ram answered, I can't risk people thinking that I looked for a loophole in my vow because I courted the kingdom. There can't be any stain on me when my kingship begins. Then the vision I have of a pure and righteous reign, Ram Rajya, will be ruined. You are a king, not a god, I exclaimed. No one expects you to be perfect. Why? Even our gods do questionable things sometimes. A little gossip can't destroy a kingdom. There was plenty gossip about your father, but he was still a fine king. But Ram only said, with that stubborn tilt to his chin, that may be so, but it is not my vision of kingship. I didn't argue. It had been a long, stressful day for us all, and I didn't have the heart to disagree further with my husband, to tell him that he was creating standards impossible to live by. I tried to sleep, willing myself to dream of Urmila, to reach and comfort her in this way. But dreams are fractious things and revealed only what they wish. I found myself in Urmila's room where she lay in bed, her eyes shut, a dim blue light misting around her. Her body was as still as death. My heart twisted with sorrow and guilt. I called her name and shook her shoulder. It was warm and pliant, but she didn't respond. Her spirit had receded somewhere far, perhaps in grief, perhaps in anger, perhaps in Abhiman. I couldn't reach her, my sister, whom I had failed in her hour of need. I woke weeping to find Ram sitting upright on the bed. There were traces of dried tears on his cheeks as well. Did you have a bad dream too? I said, sitting up myself. Was it of your father's death? No. All beings must pass when their allotted time on earth is over. I know that. What then? At first, he would not say, but after a while, he told me. I was weeping for my father because he failed at the very end as a king. He held his personal honor higher than what was good for his people. He shouldn't have done that. I'm afraid I might grow weak like him. I am sure you won't, I said. Ram shook his head. I am not so certain. After all, his blood runs in my veins. Dashrath failed because his wife pushed him to the brink, I said. I will stand by you and help you the best I can. Surely, together, we will succeed in creating Ram Rajya. He smiled then. You are the best wife a man could have. You have never caused me a single moment of sorrow, and I am sure you never will. Exhausted, I fell back into sleep, hoping for the healing blankness of oblivion, but it was not to be so. Another dream came to me. I was in a chamber made of iron, windowless. It looked familiar and yet different. At first, I thought it was empty. Then I saw the woman slumped against the shadowed wall, defeat and despair written clearly in her posture. It was Kaikeyi I was seeing, but Kaikeyi with the spirit gone out of her. Kaikeyi banished to her anger chamber, which had now become her prison because there was no one left in her life to care if she was upset. Kaikeyi, who had gambled everything for the love of her son and lost it all because she had not understood one crucial thing. This is what Kaikeyi failed to see. It is not enough to merely love someone. Even if we love them with our entire being, even if we were willing to commit the most heinous sin for their well being, we must understand and respect the values that drive them. We must want what they want, not what we want for them. Thanks for listening. Now, some word power. We walked over rough ground until our feet blistered and bled and healed and grew calluses. Calluses, calluses means an area of hard skin, especially on hands and feet. He took back with him Ram's sandals, saying he would place them on the throne. He himself would sit on the floor, governing Ayodhya as a regent in the absence of the true king. Regent regent means a person who rules a country for a limited period because the king or queen is absent or too young or too ill, etc. But dreams are fractious things and reveal only what they wish. Fractious, fractious means irritable. I called her name and shook her shoulder. It was warm and pliant, but she did not respond. Pliant, pliant means easily bent, easily influenced. Thanks for listening.